They say heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes, they carry a mop, wear worn-out shoes, and go home to a little daughter who thinks the world of them. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the story of how a single dad janitor, ignored by everyone, saw what nobody else did, and ended up saving a billionaire CEO's life. If you stay until the end, you'll see why this story will make you believe that kindness, courage, and paying attention can change everything. And if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that touch your heart. Daniel was 35, a single father, and a janitor at one of the city's tallest corporate towers. Every night, while the world's wealthiest and most powerful people left the glass-walled offices in expensive suits, Daniel would quietly roll in his cleaning cart. He didn't complain, though. His daughter Lily, just 8 years old, was the reason he worked so hard. She was his whole world. After his wife passed away from cancer, Daniel promised himself that Lily would never feel abandoned. He'd work double shifts if he had to. He'd scrub the same floors 1,000 times over. What mattered most was giving her a life filled with love. It was late one evening when Daniel's shift began as usual. The skyscraper's CEO, Victoria Hale, was still in her corner office. She was known across the nation, a billionaire genius who had built an empire from scratch. Ruthless in negotiations, elegant in every interview, but feared by employees who only saw her as untouchable. To most, she was just the Ice Queen. But to Daniel, she was simply another person who left behind coffee cups and papers he'd have to tidy up. That night, however, Daniel noticed something strange. As he pushed his cart past the glass office, he saw Victoria hunched over her desk. Not unusual, she often stayed late. But her hands trembled slightly when she tried to lift her pen. She rubbed her temples, her lips pale, her breathing heavier than it should have been. Most people wouldn't have noticed, or if they did, they would have dismissed it. But Daniel had spent months in hospitals with his late wife. He had seen symptoms, the small warning signs people overlooked until it was too late. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently, knocking on the open door. Victoria barely glanced up. "The trash can's over there," she muttered, her tone sharp. Daniel didn't move toward the bin. Instead, he stepped closer. "Are you feeling all right? You look not well." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm fine. Just tired." "Do your job." Most janitors would have bowed out. But Daniel saw the subtle droop in her eyelid, the unevenness in her grip. His heart raced. They weren't just signs of fatigue. They were warning signals of something far worse. "Ma'am, I don't mean to intrude," he said carefully, "but I think you need to get checked by a doctor. Now." Victoria bristled, ready to dismiss him. Who was this janitor to tell her what to do? But before she could snap, Daniel added in a trembling voice, "My wife, she had similar symptoms. I ignored them at first. I won't make that mistake again. Please. Just let someone take a look." For a brief moment, the Ice Queen's facade cracked. Something in his eyes, raw, honest, filled with grief, made her pause. Against her instincts, she agreed. Minutes later, Daniel was practically guiding her down the lobby, insisting on calling her driver to take her to the nearest hospital. At first, she protested. But then, as they reached the elevator, her knees buckled. He caught her before she fell. By the time they arrived at the hospital, the doctors rushed her into emergency care. Daniel sat in the waiting room, still in his janitor's uniform, holding his breath. Hours passed until a doctor finally approached. "You saved her life," the doctor said firmly. "She was on the verge of a stroke. If you hadn't noticed the signs and brought her in tonight, she might not have survived the night, or she could have lost her ability to walk or speak. You gave her a second chance." Daniel exhaled, his hands trembling. He wasn't a doctor, wasn't a hero, just a janitor who had paid attention when no one else did. When Victoria woke up, the first person she saw wasn't a family member, wasn't her assistant, wasn't a board member. It was Daniel, sitting in the chair beside her bed, eyes weary but steady. She whispered hoarsely, "You stayed?" Daniel nodded. Didn't seem right to leave. For the first time in her career, the billionaire CEO didn't know what to say. She had been surrounded by people who worked for her wealth, her power. Yet the only one who had truly cared enough to save her was a man who scrubbed her floors. Over the weeks, while she recovered, Daniel visited with Lily, sometimes in tow. The little girl would bring her hand-drawn, "Get well soon" cards, making Victoria smile in ways her employees had never seen. Slowly, she began to open up. She admitted that her empire had cost her friendships, relationships, even her health. She had been admired, but never truly cared for.